Okay, so this is going to be a really quick episode number two. As I'm sitting still in my hospital room, I'm going to be here, I guess, for a couple of more days. You'll probably hear some beeping or some weird noises going on from a machine up here that keeps telling me that there we go, keeps telling me that something's wrong, but it's not. And to one over here that's just making all kinds of gurgling noises, sending this IV. And of course, I'm a pincushion, so hopefully I'll be out of here in a couple of more days and won't have to worry about this anymore. But anyway, let me get to the story that I have to tell, and it took place during Desert Shield, um, and it's about me getting kicked out, me and another crew member getting kicked out of the country of India and told to never return. So the story begins, we were actually flying missions out of the Philippines and on the 141, and we were flying supplies, troops and everything else into Saudi Arabia, or at that time we were actually flying into United Arab Emirates, or UAE, we called it. And so in this particular mission, I had already flown it 4 times before without any problems. And so at the time, India was trying to remain neutral in this. This was when everything was first kicking off, and India didn't want, the world stage to know that they were letting us stage airplanes in there. So they were kind of trying to stay neutral in the thing. So they told us, they said, wear civilian clothes when you go there. Don't wear your uniforms. And it was kind of a joke to us. We laugh and say, we're blonde hair, blue eye, pale skin. Here we are walking in shorts and Hawaiian t-shirts and crazy stuff that we, had in the 80s and 90s that we wore. And, in a country like India, we stood out like sore thumbs. We flew in on a big green airplane with a big American flag painted on the back of it. We were carrying these big green B4 bags through the airport. So, I mean, we definitely stuck out like sore thumb. So it was kind of funny, but in that something similar happened during Vietnam, and they had USA Air. They called it USA Air as part of the CIA project. So we actually had our patches made up, and we became USA Air during that time. And here's actually my patch that I had that I wore. So USA Air, we're not really here. And so actually I flew with the 52nd Squadron out of Norton Air Force Base at the time, which was the Kangaroos. And so this is not my patch. Somebody else took this picture, but I still have that patch in my helmet bag stored away somewhere. So anyway, goes, screwed that up. How the story goes here is we took off that day, and that morning out of Clark Air Force Base, and we landed in Utapao in Thailand and picked up our cargo and whatever we were doing. And we flew into India. Now, like I said, we had already been there 4 times before, so this was our 5th mission. What would happen is State Department would meet us at the airplane, and they would hand walk us through customs through the airport. And so every other time we had been there, we didn't have any trouble. Well, here's the problem. 2 of us, myself and a flight engineer, did not have our passports. They had been lost on a previous mission. So we didn't physically have our passports. So, and our XO knew that, and he told us, he said, don't worry about it. All you need is your passport number and your expiration date, which they had on record at Squadron. So we got our passport number and our expiration date. And we had been through, customs 4 times. They never even asked us. Well, this 5th time was the charm. And they asked us for our passports. Of course, 2 of us didn't have them. So they said, well, you can't come in. So they put us in this little room with an armed guard in there, an Army guy. And it was really funny because he had an old M1A1 rifle, bolt action rifle. It didn't even have a bolt in it. It was missing the bolt in it. So the engineer and I were laughing, said, well, if we try to escape, I guess he could butt whip us to death, So anyway, State Department guys came back a little while later and got us and said, all right, and it was a big ordeal. It was an international incident. I mean, there were State Department, people involved. It was pretty high up the chain that was a problem. Me and him were causing with this, because it was supposed to be hush hush and all this. So anyway, the Indian government told us, told the State Department, said these two guys are to leave the country and never return. So what we did was we would crew swap there, and a new crew would come out and take the plane, and the plane would go on. The plane never stopped. We just swapped crews. And so what we did was we swapped crew positions with the crew that was coming out. And so we went with them, and we took off, and we got back on the plane. We went on to United Arab Emirates. Well, the plane was quick turning to UAE and going right back to Bombay. So we landed back in Bombay 12 hours, whatever later. And the State Department guys came up on the airplane. Well, he and I, the engineer, this time we stayed on the airplane, because if you stay on the airplane, that's considered U.S. soil, sovereign territory. So as long as we stayed on the airplane, it was just like us sitting on U.S. soil. They really couldn't touch us. And so we were sitting on the airplane. The State Department guy was out there, and we heard on the radio, State Department guy on the inside. We know somebody was asking him, because he gets on the radio and he goes, "Hey, so-and-so, when this plane left last, it had two guys on there. They didn't come back with it, right?" And he's like, "Oh, no, they didn't come back." And so we were literally sitting right there, 2 feet from him on the plane going, "Oh God." So what they did was they swapped us positions again. So the next crew that was coming out to take the plane back to Clark, we swapped positions with them, and we took off with them, never got off the airplane, and landed back at Clark. So from the time we initially left Clark the first time, went to Thailand, Bombay, United Arab Emirates, back to Bombay, back to Clark, it had been 46 hours. And so that was pretty much the longest mission I had ever done. And there was absolutely no way we were sleeping, because, all the excitement, normally gear up, feet up, but with all the excitement on that, there was no way he and I were going to get any rest. So we had literally stayed up for 46 hours on that mission. And I remember when we landed back at Clark, the XO met us at the plane. And the one who had told us, "Oh, don't worry about it. All you need is your passport number and your expiration date." And he said, "Take a few days off, start catching up on our sleep." And so that was it. That was the time I was told to, only country I've ever been literally kicked out of and told to never return.